Aria stood in front of the mirror, her reflection almost unrecognizable. The dress Katia had selected was elegant but strategic, midnight blue silk that hugged her curves, high neckline, long sleeves. Conservative enough to show respect, expensive enough to signal value. She was being dressed like a prize, a possession worth protecting. "You understand what's at stake tonight?" Katia asked, fastening a diamond necklace around Aria's throat. Real diamonds, borrowed from Damien's collection. Another signal of ownership. "I understand that the people who killed my father will be sitting across the table from me, and I have to smile and pretend everything is normal." Aria's voice was steadier than she felt. "Not just smile. You have to be perfect. Poised. Valuable enough that Kozlov sees killing you would be a waste." Katia met her eyes in the mirror. "My brother is gambling everything on this dinner. His reputation, his business relationships, possibly his life. Don't make him regret protecting you." The words should have angered Aria. Instead, they focused her. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about the man who'd lied to her, but was trying to save her. The man she'd kissed this morning despite every logical reason not to. Welcome to the final episode of Sold to the Mafia Lord as Payment, but she made him obsessed with her. If you're just joining us, stop right now and go back to episodes 1 through 4. The links are in the description because tonight, everything we've built comes to a head. Aria is about to face the men who murdered her father. Damien is risking everything for a woman he wasn't supposed to care about, and the choice between love and survival has never been more impossible. If you've been with us from the beginning, hit that like button now, subscribe for more stories like this, and get ready for an ending that will leave you breathless. Drop a comment with your prediction. Will Aria and Damien find their happy ending, or will this dangerous world destroy them both? Let's find out together. Damien was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, dressed in a black suit that made him look every inch the powerful businessman he was. When he saw Aria descending, something shifted in his expression. Appreciation, yes, but also concern. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly when she reached him. "I can make excuses. Say you're ill. And show weakness? I thought that's the last thing we need tonight. I'd rather show weakness than put you in danger." Aria touched his arm gently. "We're past the point of safe choices. Let's finish this." The drive to the restaurant felt too short. Aria focused on breathing, on maintaining composure, on remembering everything Katia had drilled into her about tonight's attendees. Anton Kozlov, the head of the organization. His second-in-command, Mikhail. 2 other associates, whose names she'd memorized along with their roles. "Remember," Damien said as they approached the entrance, "you're not Aria Chin tonight. You're my companion. Someone under my protection. They'll test you, try to intimidate you. Don't react. Don't engage beyond basic pleasantries. I'm a nurse. I've dealt with difficult people before. Not like these. These aren't aggressive patients. They're predators assessing prey." The restaurant was exclusive, the kind where diners paid for privacy as much as food. They were led to a private room, where 4 men already waited. Aria's breath caught when she saw Anton Kozlov. He was nothing like she'd imagined. Not a movie villain with scars and menace, but a handsome man in his 50s with silver hair and kind eyes. He looked like someone's elegant father, not a killer. "Damien Volkov," Anton said warmly, standing to greet them. "Thank you for agreeing to meet. And this must be the famous Miss Chen." His smile was genuine. His handshake was firm but not threatening. And his eyes, those kind eyes, assessed her like a jeweler examining a stone, looking for flaws and value in equal measure. "Mr. Kozlov." Aria's voice didn't shake. "Small victory. Please sit. We have much to discuss." Anton gestured to the table. "I hope you don't mind, Miss Chen, but our conversation tonight concerns business that affects you directly. Damien insisted you be present. I respect that." They sat, Aria beside Damien, hyper-aware of his tension despite his calm exterior. The other men, Mikhail and the associates, watched her with varying degrees of interest and hostility. "Let's not waste time on pretense," Anton began once wine was poured. "Your father, Miss Chen, worked for me before he worked for Damien. Did you know that? Aria's throat tightened.
No.
He was quite good at what he did. Financial consulting, we called it. Moving money, hiding assets, creating paper trails that led nowhere. I paid him well. Perhaps too well, because it made him greedy. Anton's kind eyes hardened slightly. When I discovered he was selling my secrets to Damien, I was disappointed. Betrayal in my business usually ends one way. You had him killed. The words came out flat, emotionless. I had him dealt with. There's a difference. A quick accident, no suffering. More mercy than he deserved, honestly. Anton sipped his wine. What I didn't account for was that he had children. A son still in school. A daughter sacrificing everything to raise him. When my people started investigating you both, I learned something interesting. He pulled out a tablet, turned it toward Aria. On the screen were photos, her at the hospital, Ethan at school, Mrs. Kim grocery shopping. Surveillance photos spanning weeks. You're nothing like your father, Anton continued. He was selfish, greedy, reckless. You're the opposite. Everything you do is for someone else. That kind of purity is rare in this world. Is there a point to this? Damien's voice was ice. The point, Damien, is that I'm reconsidering my position. Killing children for their father's sins is biblical, perhaps, but messy. It attracts attention, creates complications. And Miss Chin here. Anton studied her. She's already suffered enough for his mistakes, hasn't she? What do you want? Aria asked directly. Anton smiled.
Direct.
I like that. What I want is assurance that your father's betrayal dies with him. That no information he gave Damien will be used against me. And that you, Miss Chen, will never speak of your father's work to anyone. Not police, not competitors, not even in private conversations. You want me to bury my father's memory in exchange for my life. I want you to survive while helping everyone move forward. Damien has offered me substantial compensation, territory I've wanted, business opportunities, connections. In exchange, I drop the vendetta against Chen's children. You get to live normally. Your brother stays safe. Everyone wins. Except my father gets no justice. Your father chose his path. Justice is a luxury people in his position don't get. Anton's voice softened. Miss Chen, I'm not a monster despite what you might think. I don't enjoy hurting innocents. But I also can't let betrayal go unanswered. This is the compromise. You live, but you let the past stay buried. Aria looked at Damien, who was watching her intently. Everything they'd built, the fragile trust, the growing feelings, the promise of something beyond the contract, hinged on this moment. If I agree, she said slowly, I need guarantees. Not just for me and Ethan, but for anyone else my father might have mentioned in his work. Mrs. Kim, who's been helping us. My colleagues at the hospital. Anyone who might be tangentially connected. Mikhail laughed. She's negotiating? Bold. She's smart, Anton corrected. And reasonable. Very well, Miss Chen. Everyone associated with you remains untouched. You have my word. The word of a man who kills people for business disagreements? The room went silent. Damien's hand found hers under the table, squeezing tightly. Aria had just insulted one of Seoul's most dangerous men to his face. Then Anton laughed, a genuine, delighted sound. Oh, I see why you like her, Damien. She has spine. Rare quality. He leaned forward, all humor dropping from his face. My word, Miss Chen, is the most valuable thing I possess. When I give it, I keep it. Always. That's how I've survived 40 years in this business. So yes, you have my word. You and everyone you care about are safe. Forever. As long as you keep your father's secrets buried. Aria met his eyes. Saw calculation, yes, but also truth. This man operated by rules she didn't understand, but rules nonetheless. And he was offering her the one thing she'd been chasing since this nightmare began. Freedom. Then we have an agreement, she said. Excellent. Anton raised his glass. To new beginnings and old debts settled. They toasted. The tension in the room eased. Business concluded. The dinner became almost normal. Talk of markets and investments, stories and jokes. Anton was charming, cultured, discussing art and philosophy like they were at a university lecture rather than negotiating over someone's life. But Aria couldn't shake the surreal horror of it all. She was sharing wine with her father's killer, laughing politely at his jokes, pretending this was normal. Halfway through the main course, Anton addressed her again. Damien tells me you're a nurse. Trauma specialist. Emergency room, yes. Valuable skill, especially in our world. You saved one of his associates recently, I heard. I helped someone who needed medical attention. That's what nurses do. Without judgment, without questions. Everyone deserves medical care. What they've done isn't my concern when they're bleeding. Anton nodded approvingly. Integrity. I respect that. If you ever tire of Damien's employment, I could use someone with your skills and discretion. She's not available. Damien's voice was sharp.
Relax, I'm joking.
Mostly. Anton smiled at Aria. Though the offer stands, good medical professionals who understand discretion are worth their weight in gold. The dinner concluded around 11. Anton and his men left first, after final handshakes and assurances. When they were gone, Aria finally let herself breathe. You did perfectly, Damien said, his relief palpable. Better than perfect. You were brilliant. I just had dinner with my father's murderer and promised to never seek justice. How is that brilliant? Because you're alive. Because Ethan is safe. Because this nightmare is finally over. Damien took her hands. It's done, Aria. You're free. Truly free. The drive home was quiet. Aria stared out the window, processing everything. The vendetta was over. The threat was gone. In theory, she could leave now. The contract still had months remaining, but the real reason, protection from Kozlov, no longer existed. She could go home to Ethan, back to the hospital, back to her real life. The thought should have filled her with joy. Instead, she felt empty. Back at the estate, Aria went straight to her room, needing space and silence. She changed out of the dress, washed off the makeup, stood under the shower until the water ran cold. When she emerged, Damien was sitting in her chair by the window. We need to talk, he said. About what? About what happens now. The Kozlov threat is resolved. You're safe. Which means... He stood, his expression carefully controlled. Which means you don't need my protection anymore. The contract can be dissolved early. You can go home. Aria's heart clenched. Is that what you want? What I want is irrelevant. This was never about what I wanted. It was about keeping you safe. That's accomplished. You deserve your freedom. And if I don't want to leave? The question hung in the air between them. Damien's control cracked, hope and confusion warring on his face. Why would you stay? Everything that brought you here is resolved. Your debt is cleared. Your brother is safe. You can return to your normal life. Maybe I don't want normal anymore. Aria moved closer to him. Maybe the last month has changed me. Changed what I want. Aria, don't make decisions based on what you think you feel right now. You've been through trauma. Stockholm Syndrome is real. You might think you want to stay, but don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't diminish what I feel by giving it a clinical name. I'm a nurse, remember? I understand psychology. This isn't trauma bonding or Stockholm Syndrome. This is me making a conscious choice. Then what is it? Why stay? Aria took a deep breath, organizing her thoughts. When I first came here, I hated you. I hated this place, this situation, everything about my life. I counted down every day until I could leave. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I started seeing you, not the powerful businessman or the manipulative protector, but you, the man who reads in libraries at midnight because he can't sleep, who assists in surgeries even though it terrifies him, who tries so hard to be better than his father that he forgets to be human sometimes. That doesn't mean you should stay. You're right. But there's more. I've spent my entire adult life taking care of other people. Ethan, my patients, everyone except myself. Being here, as wrong as it started, gave me something I'd never had. Someone taking care of me. Yes, it was transactional at first. But Damien, you fought for me.
Protected me.
seen value in me beyond what I could provide. And that made me realize I've been settling for less my entire life. So, you want to stay out of gratitude?
No.
I want to stay because when I imagine leaving, going back to my old life, it feels like losing something precious. And that terrifies me because it means I've fallen for you despite every logical reason not to. Damien closed the distance between them, his hands framing her face. You're sure? Because once we cross this line, once we make this real instead of contractual, there's no going back. You'll be choosing this life, the complications, the danger, the world I inhabit. I'm sure. But Damien, I need you to understand something. I'm not staying as your possession or your employee. If I stay, it's as your equal. As someone who chooses to be here, who can leave whenever she wants, who has autonomy over her own life. Of course. Anything you want. I want to go back to nursing. Not here, not privately, but at a hospital. I want to save lives without it being tangled up in your business. I'll arrange it. Any hospital you want. I want to see Ethan whenever I choose. No scheduled visits, no supervision.
Done.
He can even stay here if you want. The estate has plenty of room.
And I want honesty.
Complete honesty. No more secrets, no more protection through deception. If something dangerous is happening, I deserve to know. You have my word. No more secrets. Damien's thumb traced her cheekbone gently. Anything else?
Yes.
One more thing. I want you to tell me, clearly and honestly, what you want. Not what you think you should say. Not what's tactically smart. What you actually want. Damien was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes searching hers. When he spoke, his voice was raw with honesty. I want you to stay. Not for a year, not contractually, but because you choose to. I want to come home to you, to have dinner together, to hear about your day and tell you about mine. I want to watch you be brilliant at what you do without feeling guilty for taking you away from it. I want to introduce you as my partner, not my employee. I want. He paused, vulnerability etched across his features. I want to deserve you. I want to be the man you see in me rather than the man I've been. And I want someday, when you're ready, to know that you're mine not because a contract says so, but because you want to be. Aria's eyes filled with tears. That's terrifyingly romantic for a man who claims he doesn't understand feelings. You bring out parts of me I'd forgotten existed. He kissed her forehead gently. So what do we do now? Now? We start over. No contract, no obligation. Just two people figuring out what they mean to each other. I'd like that very much. They kissed then, different from the kiss in his office yesterday. This one was slower, deeper, full of promise rather than desperation. When they pulled apart, both were breathless. Stay tonight, Damien said. Not in the guest room. With me. Just sleep, just being close. Let me prove this is real.
Aria nodded.
They walked together to Damien's private quarters, a part of the house she'd never seen. His bedroom was surprisingly simple, elegant, but not ostentatious. Human in a way the rest of the estate wasn't. They lay together in his bed, fully clothed, just holding each other. Damien's arms around her felt like safety and risk in equal measure. Aria had never felt more vulnerable or more certain about anything. Tell me about your mother, Damien said softly. You never talk about her. So Aria did. She talked about her mother's strength, her kindness, the way she'd fought cancer with dignity. She talked about the medical bills that had crushed them, the choices her father had made that seemed understandable in retrospect. She cried, and Damien held her, offering comfort without trying to fix anything. Then she asked him about his childhood, and he opened up about a father who'd been brilliant and brutal, a mother who'd been loving but powerless, the weight of expectations he'd carried since birth. They talked until dawn, sharing pieces of themselves they'd both kept hidden. By the time the sun rose, Aria felt like she'd known him for years rather than weeks. I should go, she said reluctantly. People talk if they find me here. Let them talk. I don't care. Who knows anymore? But Damien released her anyway. Though you're right. We should tell people properly rather than letting them discover it through gossip. Over the next week, they found their rhythm. Aria moved her things from the guest room to Damien's quarters. She contacted Seoul National University Hospital about returning to work part-time. She brought Ethan to the estate for dinner and watched her brother's eyes go wide at the luxury. "Nona, this is insane," Ethan whispered. "Are you sure this is okay? This seems like too much." "It's different than I expected," Aria admitted. "But it's good. I'm happy, Ethan. Really happy." Damien was patient with Ethan, asking about school and soccer without being condescending. By the end of dinner, Ethan was chattering excitedly about the estate's gym and pool, already planning his next visit. "He likes you," Aria said later, after Ethan had been driven home. "I like him. He's a good kid. You raised him well." "We raised each other." Katia was less enthusiastic about the arrangement. "You're making a mistake," she told Aria bluntly. "My brother's world will consume you. You'll lose yourself trying to keep up. Or maybe I'll help him find a way out," Aria countered. "Maybe we'll build something neither of us expected." "You're an optimist. That's dangerous here. Someone has to be." A month passed. Then 2. Aria returned to the hospital part-time, splitting her days between the ER and the estate. She saved lives at work and came home to a man who was learning how to be human again. They had dinner with Yuki, who approved of their relationship with knowing smiles. They attended fewer galas, more private gatherings with real people. Damien slowly began extracting himself from the shadier aspects of his business, transitioning toward legitimate enterprises. It wasn't fast, these things took time, but he was trying.
For her, he was trying.
One evening, 3 months after the dinner with Kozlov, Damien came home, looking troubled. "What's wrong?" Aria asked immediately. Kozlov sent a message. "He's keeping his word about you and Ethan, but there's a complication. One of his associates wants to know who treated Taeyong so successfully. Word got out about your skills." Aria's stomach dropped. "Is this a problem?" "It could be. If too many people in that world know you're a skilled trauma nurse, they'll all want access to you. It could make you a target for other organizations, people who try to force you to work for them." "What do we do?" Damien took her hands. "We have options. We could relocate, start over somewhere else. We could increase security here."
Or,
He hesitated. "Or I could step away completely. Sell the business interests that put you at risk. We'd still be comfortable, but it would mean giving up everything I've built." Aria studied his face. "Would you actually do that? Give up your empire for me?" "In a heartbeat. If it means keeping you safe and staying together, I'd walk away from all of it." The declaration should have felt overwhelming. Instead, it felt exactly right. This man, who'd once seen her as a chess piece, was willing to sacrifice everything he'd worked for. "We're not running," Aria said firmly. "And you're not giving up everything you've built. We're smarter than that. We'll figure out a middle path, one where I can practice medicine, you can maintain your legitimate businesses, and we create enough distance from the dangerous parts that I'm not a target." "That's asking a lot. So, our relationships. We'll figure it out together." They did. Over the next months, Damien systematically dismantled his connections to underground operations, keeping only the legitimate aspects of his empire. It cost him relationships, business opportunities, and political capital. But he did it without complaint, building something new alongside her. Aria continued nursing, gaining a reputation as one of Seoul's best trauma specialists. She never spoke about her past, about her father or Kozlov, or the debt that had started everything. That part of her life remained buried, exactly as promised. 6 months after the Kozlov dinner, Damien took Aria back to Yuki's gallery, the place where he'd first asked her what she saw in the art. "Do you remember what you said about this sculpture?" he asked, stopping in front of the twisted metal birdcage piece. "I said it looked like something trying to escape, or deciding if it wanted to escape, like it had forgotten what freedom looked like." "And do you still feel that way? About your life?" Aria studied the sculpture with new eyes.
No.
"I don't feel trapped anymore. I feel like I chose this. That makes all the difference." Damien reached into his pocket, pulled out a small box. Aria's breath caught. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly. "Not yet. We agreed to take things slowly, and I'm keeping that promise. But this... He opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace with a single diamond pendant. This is a promise that when I do propose, it won't be because of a contract or obligation. It'll be because I can't imagine my life without you in it. Tears streamed down Aria's face as he fastened the necklace. You're terrible at taking things slowly. Only when it comes to you. He turned her to face him. I love you, Aria-chan. I've loved you since the night you saved Taeyong without hesitation. Since you challenged me in my office. Since you chose to see the man behind the empire. And I'll spend every day proving I'm worthy of that choice. I love you too, Aria whispered. Against all logic, against every self-protective instinct, I love you. They kissed in front of that sculpture of trapped birds, two people who'd found freedom in the most unlikely place, in each other. The story could have ended there, but life continued, messy and beautiful and complicated. A year after signing the original contract, the contract they dissolved but still marked as an anniversary of sorts, Aria stood in Damien's office, now partly hers, reviewing plans for a free clinic they were opening together. Funded by Volkov Industries, staffed by the best medical professionals, serving the community where she'd once worked herself to exhaustion. Your father would be proud, Damien said, reading over her shoulder. My father would be confused that his disaster led to this. Aria leaned back against him. But maybe that's the point. Good things can come from terrible situations if we choose to build something better. Very philosophical for a Tuesday morning. I learned from the best. You've gotten quite philosophical yourself lately. Your influence. You've ruined my reputation as a cold businessman.
Good.
You are much more interesting as a human being. Ethan's voice called from downstairs. Nuna, are you ready? Coach says I can't be late again. Aria had taken over coaching Ethan's soccer team, somehow finding time between her hospital shifts and clinic planning. Damien had attended every game, learning the rules of soccer and cheering loudly despite his usual restraint. Coming, she called back. To Damien. Tonight? Dinner with just us? No business, no friends, just us. Perfect. He kissed her softly. I'll cook. You'll burn water. Then I'll order from that place you love and pretend I cooked. You'll pretend to be convinced. It'll be romantic. Aria laughed, the sound free and genuine. A year ago, she couldn't have imagined laughing like this. Couldn't have imagined feeling safe and loved and chosen. Nuna. Ethan called again, more insistent. I really have to go. I know. Damien kissed her once more. I love you. I love you too. She found Ethan at the door, soccer bag in hand, practically bouncing with energy. At 17, he'd grown into himself, confident, happy, thriving in ways that made Aria's heart swell. You're still coming to the game tonight, right? Ethan asked as they headed for the car. Damien promised he'd be there. We'll both be there. Wouldn't miss it. As they drove through Seoul's streets, Aria thought about the journey that had brought her here. From a desperate nurse drowning in someone else's debts to a woman who'd found her voice, her strength, and against all odds, her home. The contract that had brought them together had been dissolved long ago. But the connection they'd built, forged in impossible circumstances, tested by lies and danger, strengthened by choice and honesty, that was permanent. That evening, after Ethan's team won their game and celebrations concluded, Aria and Damien stood on the estate's balcony, watching Seoul's lights twinkle in the distance. Do you ever regret it? Damien asked softly. The path that brought you here? Aria considered the question carefully. I regret the pain. I regret my father's choices and their consequences. But this? Us?
No.
I don't regret this. Even knowing what it cost. Especially knowing what it cost. It taught me that I'm stronger than I knew. That love can exist in unlikely places. That sometimes the cage we think we're trapped in is actually the door to something better. She turned to face him. You gave me freedom by teaching me I always had it. I just had to choose to claim it. Damien pulled her close, and they stood together as night deepened around them. Two people who'd started as captor and captive, controller and controlled, who'd somehow found their way to equal partners, building a life neither had planned but both wanted fiercely.
Thank you, Damien said.
For what? For choosing me. When you could have chosen freedom, you chose me. That's a gift I'll never take for granted. We chose each other. That's how this works. He smiled, the genuine smile that still made her heart skip.
Yes.
That's exactly how this works. Inside, they could hear Katia preparing dinner, Ethan laughing at something on his phone, the staff moving through their evening routines. Normal sounds. Home sounds. Aria had been sold to a Mafia lord as payment for a debt she didn't owe. She'd been trapped in a golden cage, forced into a world she didn't understand. But somewhere in that impossible situation, she'd found something precious. She'd made him obsessed with her, yes, but he'd made her fall in love with him right back. And that love, built on choice rather than obligation, on truth rather than deception, had set them both free in ways neither had imagined possible. The contract was over. The debts were paid. The danger had passed. But their story was just beginning. Thank you so much for joining me on Aria and Damien's journey. If you love this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more romantic dramas like this one. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment. Was it when they first kissed? When Aria confronted Damien about the lies? When he offered to give up his empire for her? I read every single comment, and your thoughts mean everything to me. What should I write next? A story about a doctor forced to treat her ex-boyfriend who's now a famous actor? A tale of enemies to lovers between rival business owners? Or maybe something with a time travel twist? Let me know in the comments what you'd love to see next. Remember, the best love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two imperfect people choosing each other despite the obstacles. Aria and Damien proved that even in the darkest circumstances, love can bloom if we're brave enough to choose it. Until next time, keep believing in love, keep fighting for your happiness, and remember, you always have more freedom than you think. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to claim it. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next story. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in Aria and Damien. And thank you for reminding me why I love telling these stories. This is where their story ends, but your story? That's just beginning. Make it a good one.